Hey, what's up, Ocala? Coach Joey coming in from CrossFit Ocala and coming in with a little bit of nutrition information today. If you guys tuned in last week, we talked a little bit about carbohydrates, what they are, and kind of how they work. And since then, I've gotten a few questions and something that I want to kind of talk about today to explain the difference. So one of the big questions, because I mentioned sugar last week when we talked about carbohydrates, was, Coach Joey, what about fruit? And here's the difference when we talk about sugar and then processed sugar. So when you eat something like a piece of fruit, the way that your body is designed to work is it goes through a digestion process that starts typically in your mouth with your saliva. And then over time, the nutritional content of typically whatever you eat is slowly absorbed and slowly processed as your body is digesting it. Now, everybody's heard of the term processed sugar, and a lot of people aren't really familiar at what that exactly means. So processed sugar is something that is broken down before it enters the digestive system. So we'll use high fructose corn syrup, but you could assume that processed sugar is anything, even the sugar that kind of comes in a bag. Sugar, you can't walk outside and find granulated sugar. So when you talk about processed sugar, what ends up happening is the digestion process essentially has already been started for you, and that's not natural for your body. So what happens is when you ingest it, it becomes readily available. And a lot of the things that they've done studies on, especially when you talk about sugar and the reactions that you have to it, outside of the hormonal effects, when we start to talk about insulin responses and those things, it has some addictive properties to it as well. And some people may argue that. People say, well, you can't be addicted to food. But if you start to read some of the more current stuff, it's actually like that. Now, the reason as an adult you don't feel the effects as much is, think about this. Anybody who has kids, they know that if you give your kids a bunch of sugar, they're going to be wired. Now, why does that happen? It's because that energy is just readily available and it gives it to them all at once. But it doesn't, you can't really control how much you're giving them because nobody really knows how much sugar is going to put you up or above that level. The same thing that happens with your hormones. When you give it all of that stuff at once, depending on how much you take in is how much of an effect that's actually going to have on your hormones. So when we talk about carbohydrates or sugar in general, like I said, you're never going to go wrong with eating something that has a very soon expiration date on it. So when you talk about fruits, vegetables, and those kind of things, those are going to kind of be some of your best bets. And then, you could start to get into the stuff like, raisins or dates or a lot of that other stuff. But again, that stuff, it's kind of been broken down in a process to get it a little bit closer. So remember that when you're talking about sugar, processed sugars are the worst. Obviously, fruit is good for you. So don't confuse staying away from sugar as far as, staying away from natural sugars that you're going to get from food. So just remember that if you eat it and it's a whole food, it's designed for your body, not designed, but your body's kind of designed to process that appropriately so you get what you need from it. When it's a processed sugar, you've already kind of eliminated some of your body's natural process, and then it becomes readily available, and then that's kind of where you end up with some of those things that are going to affect your health and well-being per se. All right, you guys? So keep that in mind as you're going through that. Side note, holidays are coming. Anything that you buy that looks like a pie or a cake or a cupcake, processed sugars. All right, you guys? So try to avoid that stuff through the holidays. Obviously, if you guys have any questions, you're always more than welcome to ask. And hopefully we'll see you guys in the gym before the big holiday weekend. All right, you guys, Coach Joey out. Have a good one.